So now that we've gotten my thoughts out of the way, let's talk about some myths about credit cards. And these are absolute myths, and I bet we've all heard them. So the first myth is that paying them off every month is what most people do. And that is an absolute lie. Most people hold a balance, which is dumb because of the interest rates. And it's dumb regardless of what the interest rate is, whether it's 3 or 24% annually. Holding a debt that you don't have to hold is dumb. And of the individuals that do hold a balance, most of them had the intention of paying off the debt monthly, but they fell into the trap and got comfortable and they hold the balance. Let me just tell you this. If most people paid off credit cards on a monthly basis and didn't hold a balance, credit card companies would be in trouble because they wouldn't make interest. And how do you think they make their money? On fees and interest. And so these credit card companies would struggle if that was the case. Let me just tell you, credit card companies are not hurting for anything. And so you need to understand that just because you think that most people do it, and just because you think that you can do it yourself, you need so much self-awareness if you're going to use credit cards, because falling into this trap is absolutely possible for you. And then another myth is that airline miles and cash back and rewards are really good reasons to keep credit cards. And I just told you that I do, right? But it's not necessarily a good reason. And here's why. Because people get blinded by the rewards. Once again, self-awareness is key here. If you can get blinded by the rewards, you will lose. If you get blinded by the fact that the more stuff that you buy, the more airline miles you get, if you get blinded by that fact, what ends up happening? You end up getting to a point where you ran your credit card debt up too high and you can't pay it off month to month. So now you're carrying a balance. Now the credit card company is making money and they're winning. And that's the thing, is that they give you these benefits, but they give you these benefits with the thought that if I give them this, nominal benefit of these airlines miles or points, or if I give them this nominal benefit of some cash back, they're going to mess it up. And they do. People do. You do. Maybe not you specifically, but people just like you mess it up every single day because they get blinded by the rewards. So you can't allow yourself to get blinded by the rewards. You have to understand that the dangers are so much worse than these good things that can be used and that I actually use myself. But you have to understand that there's danger on the other side of them if you allow yourself to be blinded by the fact that rewards that they offer don't sound too bad. And then what about the myth of I have to keep a credit card or else my FICO score is going to struggle? I mean, I got out of all these other debts and I don't have any other debts, so I just have this credit card to keep my FICO up, and I have to have it. I have to do that. Credit card debt is too dangerous to keep something that you know is likely to hurt you. So let me explain. The FICO score can be a big deal in purchasing a home, and I understand that. And that's one of the biggest things that people argue over keeping debt and keeping a FICO score and keeping a good FICO score, is saying, I want to buy a house, I need to keep a good FICO score, I just need to do that. Well, that's not a bad argument, but why would you keep something in your life that you know is hurting you? If credit card debt is hurting you, you can't just allow it to stick around because you want to have a good FICO score. I would rather have no FICO score, which is what's going to happen if you get completely out of debt. If you have no debt, you will eventually have no FICO score. And so I would rather have no FICO score and no debt than a good FICO score and have to deal with 24% interest rates on credit card debt. That just doesn't sound like a proposition that I am going to win. It sounds like that the credit card company is just winning over and over and over again in your life if that's what you're allowing them to do. And then what about the myth of, well, I can't shop online without them? Hey, debit cards? You ever heard of a debit card? They can be used for the exact same thing. Debit cards can do the exact same thing with online shopping. And guess what? That's actual money. And if you overdraft on your bank account, they're going to, charge you penalties. That is actual money coming out of your account, not some credit. So debit cards, they'll do the same trick. And then what about, well, I need a credit card to book a a hotel or whatever. Well, guess what? And many of them will take debit cards just fine. Like once again, debit cards, they're made by Visa too or MasterCard too. So it just don't fall into these little stupid little myths that are going to or have the potential to tear your financial life apart because you feel like the good in them and the uses of them outweighs the bad of them. And what about this myth? Nobody uses cash anymore. I get that cash is far harder to come by now than it ever has been, and there's this coin shortage or whatever the heck's been going on during coronavirus. But that doesn't mean that places don't take cash. And guess what? When you pay cash, it hurts. If you have a $100 bill and you pay with that $100 bill, that hurt. Because guess what? You gave up a $100 bill and you might get change back, but that change is not going to equal $100. But if you give somebody your debit card or your credit card, what happens? They give your debit and your credit card back. And you don't feel the friction. You don't feel like anything just happened there. You just feel like, oh, I just paid for it. And so the pain of paying with cash actually is going to make you spend less money. And so places do still accept cash, and you just have to know that if it's a problem for you to carry around plastic, then maybe paying an exact change is the way you need to do it. Whatever you need to do to make sure that your financial life stays stable, absolutely do it. For a while, my wife and I, 100% on our grocery budget, we were having trouble maintaining our grocery budget correctly. And so what did we do? We said, okay, we're going to stop paying with plastic at the grocery store. We are going to pay with cash at the grocery store. We're going to take the amount of cash that we budget and not a dime more, not a penny more. And so over the course of the week, we only have X amount to spend at the grocery store. And guess what? It worked. We took cash and we never spent more than that amount of cash. Cash can win still, even in this age of electronic payments and cards. And what about this last myth? I need it for emergencies. I need it in case something happens. Well, not if you're following my plan, you don't. Before I had you pay off debt, I had you set aside a small emergency fund. And I know it is a small emergency fund, but it covers 1 month's worth of expenses for you. And so, yeah, worst case scenario, something big happens and God forbid you have to, go into debt in order to take care of that big thing. But you've already got this small emergency fund and you're going to build up a larger emergency fund after you get out of debt. And so that's not a necessity. It's not needed for emergencies. And your justification of using it for emergencies, it ends up being, oh, well, I want to order pizza tonight, and so I'm going to use my credit card to buy the pizza. Or I want to buy this online, and so I'm going to use this card to buy it online. You end up justifying things that you think are necessary in your life as emergencies and not true emergencies. When you have an emergency fund, emergencies only cost as much as the emergency itself. But if you put the emergency on a credit card, if that's your emergency fund, then your emergency is going to cost more because you're going to accrue interest likely on this emergency. And this will push you to a place where you can absolutely stay broke because you think that credit is something that is yours. Credit is not yours. Credit is the credit card company's. You can only have savings or cash, and that credit is theirs, and you can tell it's theirs because you're going to pay them the interest payments on that credit, on that debt. You just have to understand that credit limits are not equivalent to savings. It's not the same thing. If I have $10,000 in savings and something big happened and I had to pay $10,000, or I have $10,000 of a credit card limit, then of course you use the savings, because how long is it going to take you to pay off $10,000 in credit card debt? A heck of a lot longer than it's going to take to replenish a $10,000 emergency fund. So just bear that in mind and be able to understand that emergency funds need to be there for emergencies, and credit cards need to be out of your life if that's your justification for using them.